Welcome in to another episode of Echo from the Buttes. I'm your host, Tom Hardon, standing in for David Howman, who is off covering the Dallas Cowboys today. With me, I have Austen Bundy and Andrew Hayslett. And guys, Big 12 schedule is officially open with a win. It's the Sun Devils' first win in a conference opener since 2017, and I got to say it feels good to be 1-0 in the conference for the first time in a while. What did you guys take away from that yesterday?
I feel like it was a bit of a confidence booster to a degree. I mean, it's, like you said, good to have 1-0 in the conference for the first time since I was a junior at ASU. So I liked what I saw from the team, but there were still plenty of concerns. There's still plenty that I think they need to work on. But overall, it felt nice to have ASU finally win a walk-off game as opposed to having themselves be walked off on.
Yeah, absolutely. I go back to last year. Yes, the Sun Devils did have a big run in the conference, but they lost their first game on the road to Texas Tech, a different Texas team that was thought to be really good at the time. And what we saw is the Sun Devils had to win pretty much every other game to get back to the Big 12 championship. Now that the Sun Devils are 1-0 in conference play, it feels like it's still an uphill way to get there, but the hill isn't a mountain. And I'd rather climb up a small hill than a mountain.
It's much more manageable when you get that first one under your belt, and to me, it feels great that we have a kicker that we can trust in those clutch moments. Jesus Gomez, I can't say enough about him and how he carried the team on his left foot yesterday. 4 field goals, 1 extra point, accounted for half of the team's points, and you can't understate the importance of special teams. It's always going to be the afterthought when it comes to a game plan, but having that kicker in your back pocket is an undeniable advantage to us over last year.
Yeah, absolutely. I go back to one of the first spring practices. Kenny Dillingham in the scrum was saying, we're going to be going for it a lot on fourth downs this year, and then he saw Jesus' head kind of just drop. And then he said, unless you can make it, Jesus. And Jesus said, yeah, I got you, coach. And then the whole team, Dillingham said, went crazy. And I'd have to imagine it was similar to the scene we saw Saturday night. Just whole team going crazy. Jesus, his confidence is 10 out of 10. I think he's probably one of the most confident kickers in the country because he's done it before, made kicks as long as 57 yards. Going off on that, we saw Kenny Dillingham. I think he went for it twice on fourth down and did not convert, if memory serves me correctly. I don't know what those yardages would have been for kicks. So maybe in the future, now that he knows Jesus is good, he can walk the walk, as we've seen with this walk-off kick. He might trust Jesus a little more and go for it on fourth down less. I'm a conservative guy in terms of when you kick and when you not kick. I like kicking more than going for it on fourth down more times than not. I know you guys are a little bit more aggressive than I am in terms of that. And I'd like to see Kenny be a little bit more conservative in that department, and I think this could make him a little bit more conservative. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, I feel like if you're going to take the points, take the points. Like, you've got a guy like Jesus who can make those types of kicks. I mean, I'm not saying he's going to win the Luke Rosa this year, but I don't think we felt more confident about a kicker since we had Zane Gonzalez out there. So you're going to be aggressive in the right situations, but when you know you can get 3 points on a drive, take the points every time. I mean, all you're doing is making your score go up. If you trust your defense, especially, take the points. It's as simple as that.
Well, the Devils were 1 out of 2 on fourth downs yesterday. The failure to convert came late in the third quarter. It was on a 4th and 1 from the Baylor 18. Udo had a rush for no gain going up the middle, turnover on downs thankfully didn't come back to haunt the Devils, as that ensuing series was Abney's interception, which, from what I heard from fans on the ground in Waco, it really helped shift the momentum, even if temporarily, in Arizona State's favor. I know from my vantage point, as soon as Abney came down with that interception, we just started going crazy. We felt, okay, we've got this. We got a 3-point lead. Now let's make some point, get some points off of it. And ultimately points did come off of that drive. The drive carried over into the fourth quarter, and that came on the foot of Gomez again, his 33-yard field goal, his third field goal of the day, which put the Devils up 16-10 at the time. And that leads me into my point on what I saw in the offense. And if I'm being completely honest, I'm not sure what I saw from the offense. I saw some great running early in the game. I saw great ability by Sam to spread the ball around to different receivers. I had 7 different receivers come down with at least one catch. And as the Shimon Mateer fan club, we are very happy about that, seeing Mateer's 6 catches. But what really stuck with me is getting down into the red zone and then not being able to complete out drives, especially getting down inside the 5 and having to settle for a field goal. To me, I'm not sure what it comes down to, whether it's just the plays being drawn up, or we saw some of the running style from Ralik, where he's not exactly running to contact. I believe you guys were making the point earlier. He's trying to dance around too much and avoid contact, and getting a little too much east-west, not getting enough north-south. Did you guys see the same things as I was just talking about there?
Yeah, I feel like, like you said, we were talking about before, Ralik is a strong back. He's the type of dude that can get those 2 to 3 yards on short down situations. And there were too many times where, like you said, he went east to west. He was looking and dancing around for the holes. He didn't lower his shoulder and find the contact and try and get those short yardage situations. I mean, there were too many times, even on like a second down, where they needed maybe 5 or more, and instead of getting the 2 or 3 that he could by just taking a dive through the defenders, he kept trying to find the hole and try and find the space along the edge. He would end up only getting maybe a yard or barely back to the line of scrimmage. And that just doesn't help your offense in that situation. You could have had a third and manageable by getting a couple of yards by taking a dive. Otherwise, overall for the offense, I feel like they had a more balanced attack. I mean, I hear you when you're saying, like, it was not as effective as I feel like we've seen them execute before, but like, it's one of those things where a win is a win, and like, if it was working at the time, great, run with it. The running game was doing enough in order to give Sam the option downfield, and the fact that somebody like Derek Eusebio came out and had a breakout game, I think since the U of A game last year, I think we were all waiting for this guy to show up and give Jordan Tyson a little bit of a break, especially downfield. I think that fourth quarter play where he got wide open downfield for that, was that the go-ahead score, or were we already up at that point?
That led to the I believe that led to the tying score. We were down by 1 at that. It was the go-ahead score. Sorry, we were down by 1. That got us up by 7 points after the 2-point conversion.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that drive. I mean, seeing someone like Eusebio be able to come out and have his breakout game in a clutch moment like that was definitely encouraging, especially since we've all been looking to guys like Jalen Moss and elsewhere to take that pressure off of Tyson. But now you've got 2 deep threats, and I feel like the rest of the Big 12 is going to have to take notice that if it's not going to be Tyson down one sideline, Eusebio's going to potentially beat some DBs down the middle now.
Yeah, absolutely. Eusebio, solid player. He had those 2 catches. He had a pair of runs as well that looked really solid. Going back to Ralik Brown, maybe I'm just so used to watching Cam Scadaboo just plow through guys, run over guys, seek out contact. Maybe Ralik Brown's closer to the average guy than what we think. But yeah, it certainly felt that he was trying to juke out guys too much and go east-west and not go north-south. We'll see how he can just evolve and practice. It'll be interesting for me to see who's the number one running back this week. With Kyson getting healthier, we'll see Kanye Udo, I would imagine, as well. Because he had that one game, and we didn't see much of him against Texas State, and we only saw him for 7 times on the ground for only 19 yards, or 18 yards rather. This game, from when the Sun Devils brought him in and having this little production is just a surprise to me. He just hasn't been what we as a whole thought he was going to be. But on the receiving front, I think I think Eusebio is what ASU thinks Jaron Hamilton is. I think every game they've tried to throw Hamilton 1 or 2 deep balls, and I don't think they've converted yet on either one. I saw one in spring ball that they converted, but nothing else since. But Eusebio, they've been able to do that twice now, and it's worked. Going back to the U of A game, maybe Eusebio's this guy that is who we think someone else is. It'll be interesting to see if they still wind up feeding the ball to Hamilton. Will he be able to make those catches? I don't know, but it's still nice for me to see. Oh, they're taking deep shots down the field. I also thought Malik McLean was going to have a breakout game. He wound up having a few catches, I think. Just kind of a no-show again. But moving forward, maybe Eusebio's this guy who is a compliment to Tyson. Hopefully, I would think Jalen Moss comes back this week. I don't know. We'll see what Kenny Dillingham says Monday. This is going to come out Monday, so probably late sometime after this. And then we'll see if Moss is back at practice this week, practicing in full, because he was Kenny last Monday said, oh yeah, unless something crazy happens, he's going to be back. And then he had some sort of illness of some sort that kept him out. And now that he's probably, hopefully healed up from that illness, you never want to be sick. That's just something you don't want to be. Maybe he can finally get going again, come back, and be this guy who we thought he could be. Because there's a lot of guys on that receiving room: McLean, Noble Johnson, Jaron Hamilton, a lot of guys with high expectation, those transfer receivers, and none of them have really produced so far. It's been Levitt, it's been Shimon Mateer a little bit, it's been the running backs catching some balls as well, and now Eusebio. But from the guys that were supposed to take over these wide receiver 2 and wide receiver 3 positions, we just haven't seen them.
Well, speaking of Jordan Tyson, I think, to me, what I feared was going to start happening is teams are, really starting to shut him down, and I saw that in large part last night. Targeted 12 times. Yes, he did bring down 7 catches, but only for 43 yards. And it's a big drop from what we've seen in the non-conference slate, only getting just over 6 yards per catch. He did find the end zone for Sam's only passing touchdown in the game, but do you guys see it as well? Or is this something that is going to be standard for the rest of the season as we go up against the rest of the Big 12?
I think you're going to start seeing this more often. I mean, he is the best player on offense there besides Sam. Uh, it's just natural he would get double teamed. It's natural that that option would be taken away, but it doesn't take away from his talents. I mean, for me, looking at Tyson, the stat line should not matter more than when he actually catches the ball. And I mean, he caught the ball in the end zone. That's when you need him to catch the ball. Is when you're in the red zone, when you need to score. That's when he needs to come down with it the most, and he did. So as long as he's not taken away as a weapon full time, as long as he's still providing an opportunity to score, I do not believe it's going to hinder ASU's offense as much as we think, especially if they're going to have other options like a Derek Eusebio, who is going to find those first downs that you need to get down the field. If the running game is still going to be able to get you down the field close enough to where then someone like Tyson can get open on a route or get open in the end zone, then I don't think it's going to impact as much negatively as I think people think it might. Now, if this becomes a situation where you get stuck in a one-dimensional offense and the running game's not doing anything, and you're forcing it to Jordan each time because you're down by 10 points in the third quarter or something, that's when I think it could become problematic. Because if Kenny does not have the ability to game plan or to play call around Tyson, to have other options for Sam to go to, that's when the offense is going to stall out. So if he's not building plays or building packages around other weapons, and he's only focusing on Tyson when you're getting in tight spaces, that's where you open yourself up to extreme vulnerability, and defenses, all they need to do is take away one piece off the chessboard, and you're in no man's land.
Yeah, I agree what you said, Austin. If this is Jordan Tyson's floor and this happens a few weeks out of the year, I think the Sun Devils are going to be fine. But if it becomes a trend where this is the average or the median, whatever you want to call it, there's a lot of caution flags up in the air. I think for me, I'd take this week by week, see what they can do, see if they can get those other guys I just talked about a moment ago involved, get some of the other tight ends as well. And for me, it's just, can the Sun Devils get Jordan Tyson to keep doing crazy things? Because whether if it's some one-handed catch or acrobatic catch or hurling a dude, that's where Jordan Tyson's best. And if you can just get him to do those things, Jordan Tyson will produce 100-yard games, because he'll have a 20-yard catch here, an 18-yard catch there, and so on and so forth. And with that said, I'm not concerned yet.
And I think it also speaks to just how much of the defense's attention he commands when you're seeing the rest of the receiving core account for as many catches as they did on Saturday. I'll run through the numbers from this week. We talked about Eusebio, 2 catches for 78 yards. Mateer, 6 catches for 55 yards. Raleek Brown had 3 catches for 23. Malik McLean had 1 catch for 11. Same with Cam Harpole. Kyson Brown had a couple catches, but ended up being a net 0. But my point remains that Tyson, if he's drawing 2 defenders on almost every passing play, that's going to open up the rest of the receiving game. And I think we caught a glimpse of what Sam is able to do. I for one think that he is starting to come back into his own. I think the first 3 games are a little bit of an aberration. I think that now that he's been able to spread the ball around, I think we will be able to see more of that in the game plan. And I think that not only Kenny but Marcus Arroyo will trust Sam to work through his progression and get the ball to the right player at the right time. Just look at Eusebio's deep play over the middle. He got lost in the defense. Nobody accounted for him. He's just sitting there in no man's land, wide open, and Sam hit him in stride, 61-yard play, and that's what I'm looking to see when it comes down to Tyson getting double covered is who is left unaccounted for by the defense. And when it comes down to defense, if we're going to talk about the Sun Devil defense, to me, I think that they performed admirably for the first 3 quarters of the game. You saw the grind really start to get to the guys in the fourth quarter, but that, to me, that's a byproduct of just the extreme amount of injuries that the defense has been having to deal with. Number of guys stepping up and really taking on those starting roles. I loved seeing Keyshawn Elliott flying all over the field with 10 tackles. Jordan Crook had 9. Boogie Wilson had 8. Forced 3 turnovers, 1 fumble each on Baylor's opening drives of each half, and then Keith Abney's interception. I think that the defense really kept the game in check, even if the offense really couldn't pull away as it looked like they could have and should have done on a few occasions.
I think Kenny Dillingham kind of put it perfectly in his post-game press conference, where he was like, you win the turnover game 3-0, but you have to win that close of a game. Like, that's something you don't want to have to go through again. I mean, you'll take it in this situation, but you don't want to have to play that type of game again. I give the defense a lot of credit for getting 3 turnovers, especially with how injured they were. But like you said, you could see the fatigue in the fourth quarter. It was definitely a slog. And I think the clock just happened to work out in their favor at the end there, because they got burned over the top again. Like, it's the same thing. This is the 3rd time we've seen since the Peach Bowl that the defense gets burned over the top on a big play. The safeties aren't covering the guy coming across the middle, and it just ends up burning them. Tackling was subpar on that play, but I mean, like I said, the clock happened to work out for them, because if there was going to be a play where they get burned and Baylor scores quickly, you would want it there, because you still had a minute and a half, more than a minute and a half to go down the field and do what you needed to do.
Yeah, for me, it's hard to give the defense or the offense, for that matter, a grade on this game, because I saw a lot of good and I saw a lot of bad. But like you said, Austen, a lot of takeaways, 3, which is, you're probably not going to get that majority of your games on the schedule, but when they weren't taking the ball away, and I think that they forced a turnover on downs as well, but when they weren't doing that, they pretty much, I think all but 1 or 2 of the Baylor drives, they allowed points. So it was either boom or bust, kind of what I predicted going into this game. Is they either make a huge play or they let off points, which is, the takeaways are great, but the allowing points is concerning, because points is how the ball game is scored at the end of the day. So I don't know what I would give the defense's grade. And then another thing is that I don't know if it's just scheming at this point for Brian Ward. It's just we saw a lot of chunk plays in both the Mississippi State before the big play and in this Baylor game, that the defense was giving up. Oh, here's 6 yards here, 7 yards there, 12-yard first down here. Just play after play, just these offenses in these 2-minute situations, just taking chunk play after chunk play after chunk play. So that's something I'd like to see the Sun Devils do a bit better. That's something that, if I'm Kenny Dillingham, having the guys go through this week in one of the 11-on-11 periods, is let's have offense and defense do the 2-minute drill, see who comes out best. I think that we saw that last week in practice with the 2s, but that isn't the 1s. So that's something I'd like to see happen, is just get those 11-on-11 situations in a 2-minute drill, see what the defense can do to just stop hot offense. That's something I'd like to see the team work on.
I do give them credit though for getting to Sawyer Robertson. There was a point in the game where I thought if they can't get a sack, I don't think they're going to win this game. And then late in the game, late in the second half, they got a sack on Sawyer Robertson, and I thought, okay, now that they're finally getting through to him, I feel like there's going to be a little bit of a momentum shift here. There's going to be a little bit of blood in the water smelt, if you will. And after that, I think they did do what they needed to, except for on that play where they got burned over the middle in the pass. But the pressure was there. I liked what I saw from the pass rush. It was the coverage, I think, was the problem, giving up the chunk yardage each time. But otherwise, I give them a lot of credit for how banged up they were.
And the coverage was something that we talked about leading up to this game as being the real opportunity and the real unknown with how the backups are going to step up and where the holes would be apparent. But to Andrew's point, the defense did force Baylor to punt twice. One of them came at the end of the first half when Baylor was already going to be getting the ball to open the second half, or when ASU was getting the ball to open the second half. And so you can kind of take that as you will. Maybe Baylor was just kind of chalking up as pin them deep, pin the Devils deep. Don't give the opportunity for bookending scores. But then Arizona State also forced a 3-and-out in the third quarter. No yardage gained by Baylor on that drive. So there were glimpses of what we wanted to see out of the defense on a regular basis, but at the end of the day, the team just got ground down and played as well as they could have given what they were going up against. As I mentioned, I did like how Keyshawn Elliott was a consistent presence. He had a sack as part of his stat line. CJ Fight also with a sack, and getting a lot of disruption and 5 tackles for loss. I think that for as banged up as the defense was, I'm very pleased with how the Devils defense stood up. But we will be really keen to see how this defense stacks up in a short week with TCU coming up on Friday. And this TCU is a very similar team to what we just saw out of Baylor. And can we see magic in a bottle 2 weeks in a row? Can the defense hold serve enough to give some room for the offense? Austen, I'll start with you. What do you need to see out of this defense on a short week to be able to produce a similar result?
I would like to say the easy answer is improve the coverage. I mean, it's about as simple as you can make it. If we've seen anything from TCU, I mean, if you go back to the game against UNC, they were all over the place. Their wide receivers were getting open in places you didn't think you could get open in the middle of the field. So that's where I feel like Kenny needs to look at the tape and tell his guys, I don't see where you play zone at all against TCU. I feel like you need to be right up against each wide receiver. You got to play man the entire time and do your best to limit penalties. If you got to drape yourself over him at some point and prevent the pass, do it. But it's just one of those things where you need to buy time for the pass rush, because if you can pressure their quarterback into making mistakes, I mean, it's one of those, like, of course that's what you need to do, but it's execution. And if you buy enough time for the pass rush, everything else comes together on defense. I really would like to see them get to the quarterback at least twice in the first half. You need to be able to rattle him a little bit. You need to cause the head coach to think about changing up the game plan a little bit. I want to see the coverage tighten up so that the pass rush has enough time to do its job and pressure the quarterback into mistakes, throwing balls early, throwing them high. I don't want to necessarily get him out of the pocket because we know the dude has legs, but I think this is potentially going to be a shootout in Tempe. I'm glad the game is in Tempe because that's probably one of the only advantages ASU is going to get against this team. I'm not trying to be a naysayer, but I am not looking forward to Friday's game. I don't have a good feeling about it. It's the same thing that I felt with the Mississippi State game. It's one of these where if ASU pulls it off, great. That's what they needed, and they're going to prove us wrong that they are still the team that we knew they could be coming out of last season. But I'm not feeling entirely optimistic around a short week with a banged-up defense and an offense that needed some unconventional tactics in order to beat Baylor.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you, Austin. After kind of watching, but not really watching, TCU and SMU just carried each other's defenses down. I think that could be similar to what we see Friday night, like you said, Austin. We just see an offensive shootout. And right now with the Sun Devils offense, I don't like the Sun Devils' chances to win this game at this point. The Arizona State offense needs to score a lot, and we haven't really seen that from them. Well, they only put 20 something points against Mississippi State and 27 against Baylor. I'm not going to really count the other two games because they're lesser opponents. No disrespect to them, but that's just what they are. I need to see Arizona State put up at least 30 if they're going to win this game, I think. And if Arizona State wins this game, for me, it's going to got to be a defensive game, which is not something I think will happen.
I think you need at least 40 to beat TCU. I don't think 30 gets the job done. I think you're going to need at least a 40 burger to get over that hump.
And defense really isn't a strong point in the Big 12 as a whole, and that that'll lead me into now that we are 1 week through. I think almost everybody in the Big 12 has played a conference game. But we'll do a quick little whip around of the Big 12 standings and scores right now through the first set of games. Iowa State, Texas Tech, Houston, ASU, and Kansas are all 1-0. ASU and Kansas both with losses on their ledger. Iowa State and Texas Tech both 4-0. Houston 3-0. And it's going to be very early. You're not going to see any separation just yet. But is this going to be a consistent top 5 that you think we see going down the line?
I would say so. You're probably going to see a lot of these guys down the stretch. I would include a TCU in there. I would include the name escapes me now. Well, I guess at the beginning I thought Utah was going to be up in there, but then they they tripped over themselves this past week as well and kind of exposed what they could or could not be. I would not be surprised if BYU sneaks in there at some point as well. They look a little scary too. I don't expect Houston to stay up there. I know U of A is also undefeated, but that Kansas State game was not a conference game. That was scheduled well before they left the Pac-12. I don't expect them to be up there towards November, December, but who knows at this point. Nobody expected us to be up there until December came along anyway, so it could all be different at that point.
Yeah, I'm in agreement on Arizona, the Wildcats. I just don't see them being contenders, although they'll probably win their game this week. They're playing Oklahoma State, and we know the disaster that Oklahoma State is. So, yeah, looking at these other teams, UCF, they've got Kansas at home, which I think should be an interesting game. UCF undefeated. Kansas with the one loss, as you said, Tom. And those are kind of the other big games I'm watching this week. You've also got actually no, that's next week. I'm getting a week ahead of myself here. I'm jumping the gun. So that give me a minute. But yeah, regardless on Arizona, I just don't think there'll be anything special. Arizona's going to Iowa State this week, so that should be a tough game for them. Iowa State, I would expect to win another game. there's not really any other eye-grabbing games to me that I'd probably put maybe Utah at West Virginia as the next most interesting game, but there's nothing that just jumps off the table and says, "Ooh, this could be a battle of two titans." It's more of a battle of two teams that we aren't expecting to be good, and they haven't looked good this season, or kind of a lopsided match. Just not much interest this week. So this ASU TCU game is probably the Big 12's most impactful game of the week, I would say.
If it somehow upsets Iowa State, then I'll reconsider, but I don't see that happening.
I'm going to throw a little dark horse game to watch with BYU and Colorado. BYU's on my radar as you were saying, Austen, for contention for Big 12 championship game. But going into Folsom Field, it's a bit of a tough place to play, and that'll be a decent little barometer to see if BYU is going to be for real, or can Colorado pull off the upset? Can they knock the Cougars out of the top 25 and really start to shake up the rest of the field? Obviously our game is going to be the big game to watch, being the Friday game. I'm also looking at, like you said, Utah, West Virginia. How does Utah bounce back from their loss, and how do they move forward from really just getting shellacked? And I was watching a little bit of Tech in Utah. I kind of tuned out when it was still 10-7, and then I checked the score later and thought to myself, holy crap, they had an entire game in the fourth quarter. It was just, it was one of those things that I'm looking at the line score and thinking, did I miss a couple weeks here? What happened? But we've got a lot of still got a lot of room to go for the end of the season, and what we saw in the Big 12 opener, to me, I'd like to see a little bit more improvement on the defense, and I love seeing the continued spreading out on the offense. I'll open it up to you guys for some closing thoughts before we sign off here.
I will say I was impressed with Sam's improvement in his play. He made less mistakes. He looked like he was back a little bit to his normal self. I liked his grit when he had the rush. He didn't make any dumb, holding onto the ball too long and not getting rid of it, but he knew when he needed to rush. He knew when to slide and not get into any risky scenarios there. But I think overall Sam showed some strong improvement in his game, and I feel like we saw a little bit more of what we saw from him late in the season last year. So that's where I give him a lot of credit in that sense. And I think it's just encouraging to know that he is the type of quarterback that is able to rebound like that and not get too much in his head, and also not be impacted by poor performances too much. He showed a level of maturity that I think is very desirable in a quarterback for our program. So I give him a lot of kudos for what I saw this week.
Yeah, I'm not going to rehash anything I've said throughout the show. I think that's pretty much all self-explanatory. Defense to get improved in the secondary, offense continue to spread the ball. But one play that we haven't really mentioned that I want to give a shout to is Jalen Clem on special teams. There was a return, I want to say, somewhere in the first half, where the Baylor returner was looking to break one, and the offensive lineman, Clem, shed his blocker, made the tackle. Just what you want to see out on special teams. So I want to shout out him, and just that was a good play.
We almost forgot our boy Shimon Mateer. He got a lot more targets than in a lot of the previous games. He finally got involved a little bit more. He didn't find the end zone, but I still like to see that he got involved a lot more.
And keeping the Shimon Mateer fan club happy as always, and hoping that trend stays true for Friday's game. Great stuff as always, guys. Looking forward to previewing this matchup all week long on Devils in Detail. For Austen Bundy and Andrew Hayslett, I'm Tom Hardon signing off. As always, forks up and go Devils.